in this session, we are going to be covering designing and using rubrics. And so in this webinar, I'd like to talk about how we build a rubric in Canvas in assignments, discussions, and quizzes. We'll look at the rubrics index and its purpose, and we'll use a rubric in SpeedGrader to evaluate student work. Okay. And so this is the tip sheet that goes along with the rubrics, and we'll email this out at the end of the workshop. But really quickly, what are rubrics? They're just an assessment tool that you can use for communicating expectations of quality, typically divided into rows and columns. One really cool thing about Canvas is that you can build rubrics at the course level, and that's what we're going to look at today. But if you work within a program and you have rubrics that are shared across different instructors, then you can also build them at the account level, or we would call it the sub-account level. So meaning every course within your department's account could access those rubrics. Rubrics in Canvas can be set up for scoring or non-scoring. So maybe you just want to use a rubric to assess students' work, but you don't want to attach a grade to it, and you could set it up so that you're not attaching a grade, you're just giving feedback. And then you can manage those rubrics in the rubrics index. So let's look at that. From the homepage, I can go to look at the rubrics that I have in this class by going to this rubrics index. So I'm going to click on that. And then I already have a few rubrics that are added to this course. I can add another one here. We do suggest that you add them in directly into the assignments that you are using them for rather than in here, but you can also build them in here. But even if you build it in an assignment, it will show up here, and then you can use it in other assignments. So let's start by adding an assignment, adding a rubric to an assignment. Okay, so I'm in an assignment, and in order to add a rubric to this assignment, I would scroll to the bottom, select plus rubric, and then I can start to build my rubric here. I can also find a rubric, and we'll demonstrate that in just a minute with a discussion. Okay, so if I want to add a rubric to a discussion, I can go into the discussions, and I'm going to look at discussion example. I want to add a rubric to this one. So discussions are a little bit different from assignments. So assignments, you had to scroll to the bottom, but you're not gonna, that doesn't work with a discussion. Down here is where you're gonna see student replies to your discussion post. In order to add a rubric to a discussion, you would go to the three-dot menu and then add rubric here at the bottom, and then add rubric again. And so again, it's the same format that we saw with the assignment, where you can build your rubric here. I do have, since this is a discussion, I want to add a rubric that I've already created to this one for discussion. So I'm going to go in here to find a rubric. I need to choose my class. So these are some of the classes that I'm in, but I'm going to choose this one. And I want to use this discussion rubric. I select it and I scroll to the bottom, and so then it just populates that rubric that I've built already for another discussion into this one. And I think that that is good. Okay, so it's in there. And then I can also add a rubric to a quiz, which is something that's different from Moodle. So I can go into a quiz, and I can click on the quiz that I want to add the rubric to. And like discussions, I'm going to go here to the three-dot menu, and I'm going to click on Show Rubric, Add Rubric, and then I can build my rubric here. I can also find a rubric if I have one. Okay, so That is how you could add rubrics to the different activity types in Canvas. So let's go ahead and design a rubric and build a rubric. These are a lot easier to build than they were in Moodle. And so we're going to build one into the assignment, into one of the particular assignments. I'm going to go to the assignments index. I'm going to go to assignment 2. I'm going to go down to the bottom and add a rubric. And so I want to give this one a name. I'm going to call this one paragraph. All of them are named some rubric to start off with. So you definitely want to change the name. Otherwise you'll have a whole lot of some rubrics. Okay, paragraph rubric. Okay, so I have my rubric saved on another page offline because I want to be sure of the order of this before I start building it, because one of the things about Canvas is you can't reorder the criteria once you put them in. So you want to make sure that you have your rubric developed offline, and then you just copy and paste to add that. Each rubric starts, each blank rubric starts with a default criteria and ratings, and is always set to 5 points, but all of these are things that you can change. So we'll start by, I'm going to add a criterion. So I'm going to click on this pencil icon. I'm going to put my title. And then I actually have, you can leave this section blank, but I am going to put a long description here. You can leave it blank and put your descriptions in the ratings, or you can put them here. So I just added that one. I have a second criterion. I'll select new criterion. I could just add that there. I could also just copy one, especially if I'd already built out all the ratings. It would be easier just to copy that. I'm going to go offline, put in my long description, and I'm going to build my ratings, and then I'm going to go back in and just demonstrate the duplication. So I want my topic sentence, maybe in my class. We've been focusing on the topic sentence, so I want to give this one more points. And so I'm going to give this one 8 points, update rating. And we haven't been working that much on supporting paragraphs, so I want to, kind of weight that one less, so I can give that one less points. Then I'm going to add a new criterion. And so I can decide if I want to duplicate either the topic sentence or the main body or supporting. And this would be important if maybe I want the conclusion, the next criterion, to have the same point values that were already set up with main body. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I just duplicated it. I'm going to change the description name and give it a new long description. I'm going to update that, and then notice that it duplicated the points of the one that I chose for it to duplicate. Okay. So I can also choose to have these grade on. I can choose it to be either by default, the student would get either 8 points or no points for topic sentence, 3 points or no points for main body, and the same for conclusion. But I can choose to give students a range. And what that means is that I can give students anywhere from 8 to 0 points in between. So all of, and decimals are possible as well. So I'm going to do that. I can adjust the points here if I want. So if I decide, I want that to be worth 10 points, I can do that easily here as well. So now I have a rubric with 3 criteria, total points 16. It is important to, for discussions and for assignments, you will need to say whether or not you want to use this assignment for grading. So I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to select Create Rubric. Okay, so I get this message and it's telling me that in my grade book, this assignment is worth 40 points, but my rubric is set for 16 points. And so I can actually change I can elect to change the assignment points to match the rubric. So basically changing the 40 points to 16, or I can elect to leave them different. I'm going to say I want it to change. And so my before the points on this assignment were at 40, but because I had it change it, now the points for this assignment are worth 16. So just something to keep in mind. You can leave them different if you want to use the same rubric for different assignments with different point values. You just might have to adjust. Okay, so we've just built that rubric. And let's take a look at how it looks in different assignments. Okay, we'll go into SpeedGrader and grade with these. Okay, so I'm going to access SpeedGrader here through the assignment. So we'll start with the assignment. So here's a student submission, and I can give manual points here, or I can view the rubric. I can toggle the screen and to make it bigger, easier to grade. I have my ratings here. So I could give full points, no marks, full points. I could just click on it like that, but I can also adjust because we set it up to give a range. It just means that we can add this, but if we had set it up just for points, no range, then we would just have the options here. But let's say I want to give the student an 8. I could give feedback on each one. And then I want to save. So here's my feedback. I'm going to submit. And I guess it's submitted. And that's the total number of points that the student got on this assignment based on how I graded them in the rubric. Let's take a look at rubrics in a quiz, or actually rubrics in a discussion first. So we'll go to discussion 1, and I am going to go to SpeedGrader. And I have a few options here. So this is Tony's submissions in that discussion. I can select the rubric, and for this one, I don't have a range here. It's just all or nothing. So maybe I just give the student this feedback. I can say whether or not I can give specific comments here. And I can save that. And there you got a 4 out of 5 on this one, and then submit. So that's what it looks like in a discussion. And I'm going to go open that up. Okay, and let's take a look at it in a quiz. So this is also, this is something different from Moodle. In Moodle, we couldn't use rubrics in quizzes, but in Canvas, you can. So I want to demonstrate what this looks like in quiz 2. I'm going to go to SpeedGrader. We can also grade quizzes in SpeedGrader. This is how you would grade any essay assignments in a quiz or anything where you would have to give a manual grade. So here's an example of a quiz. And so Canvas did automatically grade, the true, false, multiple choice questions, but this quiz type also included an essay question. It did automatically grade the short answer question, which this student got wrong. But we do need to give a grade. I came in earlier and played around with it and gave this one 1 point, but I had to manually grade it and there wasn't a grade given for this one. But notice that I was able to add a rubric to this, and it was just a basic rubric that I used to grade this. And then the one thing I'm still confused about, and I think we'd like to get more clarity on, is the rubric in a quiz is attached to the whole quiz rather than a particular question. So really the rubric would be, you wouldn't necessarily need a rubric for any of these automatically graded ones. It's just this one. So I think just figuring out how we're going to correlate a rubric at the quiz level to a particular assignment. The other thing I noticed is that this rubric is set for, it was on a 12-point scale, so the student got 9 points on it, but that 9 points didn't go into the grade for the quiz. I still had to manually go in and add. So I guess I could have, gone in and done something like given the student a 90%. Or actually, I guess that would be like 8%, 80%. So I'm going to submit. And interestingly enough, nothing changed. We'll work out the specifics of that. So that's what the rubrics look like in SpeedGrader with quizzes, with discussions, and with examples. And so I'm going to go back to the tip sheet. We talked about what rubrics are. We talked about managing them in the rubrics index. We talked about adding rubrics to assignments, discussions, and quizzes. We designed a rubric and we added information we added different criterion. We added ratings. We made sure that we adjusted the points of the rubric to match the points of the assignment. We also we set it up so that it could show a range. And then we looked at how we would use those rubrics in the SpeedGrader for the different assignment types. So a few things to remember: rubrics cannot be edited once they've been added to more than one assignment. But if you do want to edit a rubric, if you want to add a rubric to another assignment or discussion or quiz, and you want to make some changes to that, you can copy the original rubric, make the changes to that copy, and then add that copy to the assignment. Another thing to remember is that criterion cannot be reordered once they're added to a rubric, so just make sure you plan out your rubric ahead of time. By default, rubric ratings are created as individual point values. So that's that range checkbox that we saw when we were building it. So you can set it to where you can manually enter scores, or you can set it to be discrete points that you've set out in your ratings. And if you want the rubric to calculate a grade on an assignment or graded discussion, you do need to select use this rubric for assignment grading in the settings of the rubric itself. So are there any questions about rubrics? You guys have been an awesome audience.